Human Janitor saved a frozen hatchling found in the trash. Now every dragon calls him Emperor. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The cleaning drone had broken down again. So, as always, Marcus Dean grabbed his mop and prepared to do the job that no one else wanted to do on Outpost Station Epsilon 9. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow as he pushed his cleaning cart down the dimly lit maintenance corridor of Epsilon 9. The space station hummed with activity as it orbited the frontier planet Nexus, serving as a crucial waypoint for interstellar travelers and a diplomatic hub for dozens of alien species. Yet here in the bowels of the station, Marcus worked alone, invisible to the diplomats, merchants, and military personnel who passed through the gleaming upper levels. "Another glorious day serving the Interstellar Coalition," he muttered, checking his work tablet. A disposal malfunction in Docking Bay 12 needed attention. Something about foreign biomatter in the trash compactor. Probably some trader trying to smuggle exotic fruits again. Last month, he'd found a cache of Venusian fire melons that had nearly burned through the recycling unit. At 52, Marcus had spent the last 15 years of his life on Epsilon 9. After a disastrous investment lost him everything back on Earth, he'd taken the only job available to a man with no specialized skills, station maintenance. The pay was minimal, but it covered his tiny quarters and daily meals at the staff cafeteria. He sent what little remained to his daughter's college fund back home. As he rounded the corner toward Docking Bay 12, Marcus noticed an unusual commotion. A group of draconian diplomats, tall, scaled humanoids with elongated snouts and vestigial wings, were arguing with station security. The Draconians rarely visited this section of the station. Their kind considered themselves royalty among the stars, descendants of an ancient spacefaring civilization that had explored the galaxy when humans were still figuring out how to make fire. The transport authorization was perfectly valid, insisted one Draconian, his scales shifting from green to an irritated red. "We demand access to our cargo immediately." The security officer, a stocky woman with sergeant stripes, stood her ground. "Your authorization expired yesterday. You'll need to reapply and wait for customs clearance. That's standard protocol for biological materials." Marcus slipped past them, trying to remain invisible as usual. The Draconians barely glanced his way. To them, he was merely another human servant, not worth acknowledging. He'd learned that most alien species viewed humans as the galactic newcomers, barely tolerated in the cosmic community despite Earth's rapid technological advancement after first contact. Inside Docking Bay 12, Marcus found the trash compactor jammed with shipping materials. He sighed and began the tedious work of clearing the system. Most of it was standard waste, food packaging, broken shipping containers, and discarded personal items. But as he reached the bottom of the pile, something caught his eye, a small container, roughly the size of a shoebox, with frost forming along its edges. Curious, Marcus pulled it out. The container was made of a translucent material he didn't recognize, with draconian script etched into its surface. Through the frosted surface, he could make out a small, curled shape inside. "What the hell?" he muttered, wiping away some of the frost. The shape inside was unmistakable, a tiny draconian hatchling, no larger than a human infant, its scales a pale blue, its wings not yet developed. And most concerning of all, it wasn't moving. Marcus checked over his shoulder. The Draconians were still arguing with security outside. This container had been discarded, thrown away like garbage. Were they smuggling hatchlings? Or worse, had they intentionally discarded this one? He knew he should report this immediately. Handling alien biological material without authorization was strictly forbidden under Coalition law. But something about the tiny creature's stillness pulled at him. If it was still alive, every second might count. Marcus made a split-second decision. He opened the container, releasing a hiss of frigid air. The hatchling lay motionless, its scales covered in a light layer of frost, its tiny chest still. Cursing under his breath, Marcus gently lifted the creature. It was surprisingly light, its body cold to the touch. "Come on, little one," he whispered, cradling the hatchling in his work-worn hands. He remembered something from his emergency training. Body heat was the most efficient way to warm someone suffering from hypothermia. Without hesitation, Marcus unzipped his maintenance coveralls and placed the tiny dragon against his chest, then zipped the coveralls back up, creating a makeshift incubator. The hatchling remained motionless against his skin. Marcus began rubbing its back gently through the fabric, trying to stimulate circulation. "Don't die on me," he murmured. "Not today." For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, just as Marcus was losing hope, he felt a twitch against his chest. The hatchling moved, ever so slightly, its tiny claws scraping against his skin. A moment later, he felt a more deliberate movement. The creature was stirring. Relief washed over him. But that relief was short-lived as he heard voices approaching. The Draconians were coming, and he was holding what had to be contraband. Marcus looked around frantically. The maintenance closet was his only option. He slipped inside just as the bay doors opened. Through a crack in the door, Marcus watched as 3 Draconians entered, their scales shifting between green and dark purple. A color pattern he'd learned indicated stress or anxiety. "We must find it quickly," said the tallest one, his voice a low hiss. "If anyone discovers what we've done." "No one will," interrupted another. "It's just a failed specimen. The genetic markers weren't expressing correctly. Protocol dictates elimination." Marcus felt the hatchling move again, more vigorously this time. He placed a hand over the bulge in his coveralls, trying to keep the creature still and quiet. "Failed specimen? Elimination?" The words chilled him more than the frozen container had. "Search the compactor," ordered the tall Draconian. "If we don't find the containment unit, we'll claim it was lost in transit." As they began searching, Marcus felt something unexpected, a small but intense heat emanating from the hatchling. The cold creature was rapidly warming, its body temperature rising against his skin. And then, without warning, a high-pitched sound emerged from inside his coveralls. A chirp, followed by a tiny, crackling growl. The Draconians froze. "Did you hear that?" asked one, head tilting. Marcus held his breath, pressing himself against the back of the closet. The hatchling chirped again, louder this time, and scratched at his chest. "It came from over there," said the tall Draconian, pointing toward the closet. Marcus knew he was trapped. In seconds, they would find him, and he'd be charged with theft of draconian biological material, a crime that carried a minimum 10-year sentence in a coalition prison. His heart pounded as footsteps approached the closet door. Just then, the station's emergency alarm blared. Red lights flashed throughout the bay. "Attention, all personnel," announced the station AI over the intercom. "Environmental system malfunction detected in Section 12. Emergency evacuation protocol initiated. Please proceed to designated safety zones immediately." The Draconians hesitated, looking at each other in confusion. "We cannot be discovered here," said the tall one. "Return to the diplomatic quarters. We will deal with this later." After a moment's hesitation, they left, the bay doors sliding shut behind them. Marcus waited, counting to 100 before he dared to open the closet door. The alarm continued to wail, but he knew there was no actual emergency. The environmental systems in this section were functioning perfectly, which meant someone had triggered the alarm deliberately. "You can come out now, Marcus," said a familiar voice. Marcus emerged to find Sarah Morgan, the station's chief engineer, standing by the control panel, a knowing smile on her face. In her early 40s, with dark hair streaked with premature gray, Sarah was one of the few people on the station who treated him like a human being rather than a janitor. "I don't know what you're mixed up in," she said, "but those Draconians looked like bad news. Thought you could use a distraction." Marcus unzipped his coveralls slightly, revealing the now active hatchling, its tiny head poking out, eyes open and alert. Its scales had changed from pale blue to a vibrant gold, shimmering under the emergency lights. Sarah's eyes widened. "Is that what I think it is? Found it in the trash compactor. Frozen. They were trying to kill it, called it a failed specimen." The hatchling chirped, its tiny forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. Then, to Marcus's astonishment, it began to climb up his chest, tiny claws digging into his skin until it reached his shoulder. There, it nuzzled against his neck and made a purring sound. "Marcus," said Sarah, her voice hushed. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "That's a draconian royal hatchling. The gold scales, they're incredibly rare. One birth in a million, maybe less." "How do you know that?" "I dated a draconian xenobiologist for 3 years. Learned more about their biology and culture than I ever wanted to know." She approached cautiously, examining the hatchling without touching it. "The gold ones are considered sacred. Their birth is supposed to herald a new age or something." The hatchling chirped again, then did something unexpected. It extended a tiny wing-like appendage and touched Marcus's cheek, leaving a small smear of golden liquid. "What was that?" Marcus asked, reaching up to touch the substance. "Don't." Sarah grabbed his wrist. "That's imprint fluid. The hatchling has chosen you as its parent." "It's what?" "Draconian hatchlings imprint on the first being that shows them care after they emerge from their egg, or in this case, after they're revived from near death. It's a biological bond. And with a royal hatchling." She shook her head in disbelief. "Marcus, we need to get you both somewhere safe. When the Draconians discover what's happened, there's going to be hell to pay." The hatchling made another purring sound, then curled itself around Marcus's neck like a living collar, its tiny body radiating surprising warmth. "What am I supposed to do with it?" he asked, gently stroking the creature's head with one finger. Despite his confusion and fear, he couldn't help feeling a surge of protectiveness toward the tiny being. "First, we need to get it food. Draconian hatchlings need to eat within an hour of waking or they won't survive. Then we need to figure out why those diplomats were trying to kill a royal hatchling, and what we're going to do about it." As if understanding her words, the hatchling chirped urgently, its tiny stomach rumbling against Marcus's neck. "What do they eat?" he asked. "Protein, mostly. Raw meat is best. And some kind of mineral supplement, calcium, I think." Marcus nodded. "The kitchen in the staff cafeteria. We can get what we need there." As they hurried through the maintenance corridors, the hatchling clinging to his neck, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed irrevocably. For 15 years, he'd been invisible on this station, just another human doing the work no one else wanted to do. Now he was carrying what might be the most valuable and dangerous creature in the entire coalition. "Sarah," he said as they approached the service elevator, "why would they want to kill a royal hatchling? Aren't they supposed to be sacred?" Sarah's expression darkened. "Politics, probably. The Draconian Empire is in turmoil. Their emperor died without a clear successor. There's been infighting among the royal clutches for months. A new royal hatchling would complicate the succession crisis, especially if it doesn't belong to one of the current contending bloodlines." The hatchling chirped, as if affirming her assessment. "So they tried to dispose of it quietly," Marcus concluded. "Dump it in the trash on a remote station where no one would notice." "But you did notice," said Sarah. "And now you've saved a royal draconian hatchling that's imprinted on you, a human janitor." She laughed, though the sound held little humor. "The xenopolitical implications are, well, massive doesn't begin to cover it." The elevator arrived, and as they stepped inside, the hatchling suddenly tensed around Marcus's neck. A moment later, its scales shifted from gold to a deep, alarming red. "What's happening to it?" Marcus asked, alarmed. Before Sarah could answer, the elevator doors opened, revealing 2 draconian security officers, their own scales a matching red, weapons drawn. "Human," said one, pointing a clawed finger at Marcus. "You are in unauthorized possession of draconian royal property. Surrender the hatchling immediately or face execution." The hatchling hissed, a surprising sound from such a tiny creature, and its claws dug deeper into Marcus's skin. "No," he said, surprising himself with his firmness. "I found this hatchling abandoned and dying. I saved its life, and now it's chosen me." The Draconians exchanged looks of disbelief and rage. "Impossible," spat one. "A royal hatchling would never imprint on a lesser species." In response, the hatchling raised its head from Marcus's neck, displaying the golden smear it had left on his skin, the imprint mark. The sight caused both Draconians to step back, their scales shifting rapidly between red and a pale yellow that Marcus had never seen on their kind before. "The sacred bond," whispered one. "It cannot be." "It is," said Sarah firmly. "Now, unless you want to violate about 15 different coalition treaties by attacking a bonded caregiver, I suggest you lower your weapons and let us pass." For a tense moment, Marcus thought the Draconians might attack anyway. Then, to his astonishment, they lowered their weapons and stepped aside. As he and Sarah passed, the Draconians did something even more surprising. They bowed their heads. "What just happened?" Marcus whispered as they hurried down the corridor toward the cafeteria. "I'm not entirely sure," Sarah replied, "but I think you just became a very important person in Draconian society." The hatchling, its scales returning to their brilliant gold, purred contentedly against Marcus's neck, seemingly unaware of the chaos it had caused, or perhaps perfectly aware and simply unconcerned. In the staff cafeteria kitchen, Marcus found some raw synthetic protein, designed to mimic Earth beef but safer for diverse alien digestive systems, and offered a small piece to the hatchling. The tiny dragon sniffed it cautiously, then devoured it with surprising speed. Marcus continued feeding it small pieces, while Sarah searched the nutritional supplement cabinet for calcium. "Here," she said, crushing a calcium tablet into powder and mixing it with a little water. "Try to get it to drink this." Marcus dipped his finger in the mixture and offered it to the hatchling, which licked the liquid eagerly, its tiny forked tongue tickling his skin. "It needs a name," he said absently, watching the creature eat. "Marcus, focus. We have bigger problems right now. The entire Draconian diplomatic contingent is going to be looking for that hatchling, and for you. We need a plan." He nodded, but part of him couldn't help wondering what one named a baby dragon. Something dignified, he thought. Something that reflected its royal status. His thoughts were interrupted as the cafeteria door slid open. Marcus tensed, expecting more Draconian security. Instead, Station Director Harrington entered, flanked by 2 human security officers. In her 60s, with steel-gray hair and a perpetually stern expression, Director Harrington ran Epsilon 9 with military precision. "Mr. Dean," she said, her gaze fixed on the golden hatchling. "It seems you've created quite a diplomatic situation." "Director, I can explain." She held up a hand, silencing him. "Save it. I've already received formal complaints from the Draconian ambassadors, as well as a rather cryptic message from their High Council on the homeworld. Something about a sacred bond and human interference in royal succession." The hatchling, having finished its meal, chirped happily and climbed back to Marcus's shoulder, where it began grooming its tiny wings. "Is it true that the creature has, what did they call it, imprinted on you?" asked Harrington. Marcus turned his head, showing the golden mark on his neck. "Yes, ma'am." Director Harrington sighed deeply. "In 30 years of diplomatic service, I've never encountered anything quite like this." She studied the hatchling for a moment, then made a decision. "Mr. Dean, you are hereby relieved of your maintenance duties and reassigned to Dragon Care, I suppose. Chief Engineer Morgan, you will assist him, given your knowledge of Draconian biology." "Director," said Sarah, "those Draconians tried to kill this hatchling. They deliberately froze it and threw it away like trash. There's something bigger happening here." "I'm aware," replied Harrington grimly. "Which is why you'll both be moved to secure quarters immediately. The Draconian situation is complicated. Their empire is on the brink of civil war, and somehow, this hatchling, and now you, Mr. Dean, are at the center of it." As if understanding it was being discussed, the hatchling raised its head and let out a series of chirps that sounded almost like speech. "It's trying to communicate," said Marcus, surprised. "Impossible," said one of the security officers. "Draconian hatchlings don't develop speech capabilities for at least 6 months after hatching." Yet the hatchling chirped again, more insistently, then extended its wings, which seemed larger than they had been just hours ago, and launched itself from Marcus's shoulder onto the table. There, it stood upright on its hind legs, looking remarkably humanoid despite its reptilian features, and began making a series of gestures with its front claws. "It's signing," said Sarah in disbelief. "Those are draconian formal gestures. They use them in diplomatic settings." The hatchling continued its silent communication, its movements becoming more complex. Then, to everyone's shock, it opened its mouth and produced a sound unlike any it had made before. A word, rough and hissing, but unmistakable. "Emperor," it said, pointing a tiny claw directly at Marcus. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Director Harrington cleared her throat. "Well, Mr. Dean, it appears you've been promoted from janitor to emperor in the span of a single shift. That might be a station record." Before Marcus could respond, alarms blared throughout the cafeteria. The station's AI voice announced, "Warning, unauthorized spacecraft detected approaching docking bay. Vessel identified as Draconian Imperial Command Carrier. Defense protocols initiated." The hatchling hissed, its scales shifting briefly to red before returning to gold. It leapt back to Marcus, climbing his arm to resume its position around his neck. "They're here," it said, its voice clearer now, though still raspy and childlike. "What?" Marcus stared at the creature in shock. "Who's here?" The hatchling's golden eyes met his, filled with an intelligence that seemed impossible in a newborn creature. "The ones who fear me," it said. "The ones who would destroy what I will become." Director Harrington activated her comm unit. "This is Director Harrington. I need a full security team to escort our special guests to Diplomatic Suite 1 immediately. And contact Coalition Command. Tell them we have a Code Indigo diplomatic situation." She turned to Marcus, her expression grave. "Mr. Dean, I don't know what you've gotten yourself into, but it appears you're now at the center of what could be the biggest interstellar incident since first contact. That hatchling has chosen you, and according to Draconian law, that means something significant. It means," said the hatchling in its strange, raspy voice, "that he is my guardian, my emperor, and through him, I will unite the stars." Marcus looked down at the tiny creature curled around his neck. Just hours ago, he'd been a nobody, a human janitor on a backwater station. Now he was apparently an emperor to a race of space dragons. As armed security personnel entered to escort them to safety, Marcus gently stroked the hatchling's head with one finger. "So," he said quietly, "what exactly does an emperor do?" The hatchling's eyes, gold and ancient despite its infant body, gazed into his. "You will learn," it said. "We both will." Outside the station, the massive Draconian warship moved into position, its weapon systems powered but not yet targeting. The diplomatic crisis was just beginning, and at its center stood the most unlikely Imperial duo in galactic history, a human janitor and the dragon hatchling he'd rescued from the trash. As they were led through the station corridors, flanked by security, Marcus felt the weight of the hatchling on his shoulders and the much heavier weight of responsibility settling upon him. Whatever came next, his life of anonymity was over. For better or worse, he had become someone important. The hatchling, seeming to sense his thoughts, nuzzled against his cheek. "Don't worry," it whispered, its voice growing stronger with each word. "I chose you because you have what my kind has lost, compassion. You saved me when my own people discarded me. That is why you are emperor. That is why they will follow you." "And if they don't?" Marcus asked. The hatchling's scales shimmered, gold giving way momentarily to a deep, royal purple before returning to their brilliant luster. "Then," it said with surprising conviction for such a tiny being, "we will teach them why humans have survived against all odds on their hostile world. We will show them the strength that lies in kindness. And they will learn to follow, or they will fall." Marcus felt a chill at those words, and at the absolute certainty with which they were spoken. What exactly had he bonded with? And what would the coming days bring as the Draconian Empire came face to face with its new emperor? A human janitor from a backwater station who had simply been kind enough to save a life others had thrown away. The answers would come soon enough. For now, Marcus Dean, former janitor and newly minted emperor, walked forward to meet his destiny, a tiny golden dragon perched upon his shoulder, and the fate of multiple worlds resting upon his decisions. The dragon hatchling purred contentedly, secure in the knowledge that it had chosen correctly. And Marcus, despite his fear and confusion, felt something he hadn't experienced in years: purpose. Whatever came next, he would face it head-on, protecting the innocent life that had entrusted itself to him. After all, that's what emperors did. And apparently, that's what he was now, whether he was ready for it or not. The diplomatic suite on Epsilon 9 had never housed a former janitor before. Marcus sat uncomfortably on an ornate chair designed for beings with much larger frames than humans, his feet barely touching the floor. The golden hatchling remained curled around his neck, occasionally chirping or whispering observations in his ear. "Your heart rate is elevated," it said, nuzzling against his cheek. "You are afraid. Wouldn't you be?" Marcus replied quietly. "There's a warship full of angry space dragons outside, and apparently I've accidentally become their emperor." The hatchling made a sound that resembled laughter. "Not their emperor. My emperor. There is a difference." Before Marcus could ask what that difference might be, the suite door slid open. Director Harrington entered, followed by a delegation of Draconians, the most impressive specimens Marcus had ever seen. Unlike the diplomats he occasionally glimpsed in the station corridors, these Draconians wore elaborate armor inscribed with glowing runes. Their scales shifted between deep purple and midnight blue, and their eyes gleamed with ancient intelligence. "Marcus Dean," announced Director Harrington formally, "may I present High General Varix of the Imperial Draconian Guard and members of the Sacred Clutch Council." The lead Draconian, towering nearly 8 feet tall, approached Marcus. To Marcus's surprise, the general bowed deeply. "Human," he said, his voice resonant and formal, "I come bearing the greetings of the 5 royal clutches of Draconos Prime. We seek audience with the Golden One who has chosen you." The hatchling lifted its head from Marcus's shoulder, but didn't leave its perch. "I am here, General Varix," it said, its voice surprisingly strong and clear for such a tiny creature. "Speak your purpose." The assembled Draconians murmured in surprise. One stepped forward, his scales a lighter blue than the others. "The hatchling speaks already? Impossible. It cannot be more than a few days old." "I was born in the before," said the hatchling cryptically. "My egg waited. The time is now." "The prophecy," whispered another Draconian, his scales shifting to a reverent gold. "The one who remembers the past lives." Director Harrington cleared her throat. "Perhaps someone could explain to Mr. Dean what exactly is happening? And to me as well, since this is my station and there's currently a heavily armed Draconian warship parked outside it." General Varix nodded solemnly. "Of course." He turned to Marcus. "Human, the hatchling you rescued is no ordinary Draconian. The golden scales mark it as a Nexus soul, one born with the accumulated memories of past generations. Such births occur only in times of great crisis for our people, when guidance is needed. The last Nexus soul emerged 10,000 years ago, during the Void Wars." Marcus glanced at the tiny creature on his shoulder. "You have the memories of your ancestors?" The hatchling blinked its golden eyes. "Not yet. They come in fragments, as I grow. But I know what I am, and what I must become." "Which is?" Marcus prompted. "The uniters of the fragmented empire. The bridge between species. The one who will lead both Draconians and humans to their shared destiny among the stars." The hatchling's voice grew stronger with each pronouncement, its tiny body seeming to glow from within. General Varix knelt before Marcus's chair. "We have come to pledge our loyalty to the Golden One and to its chosen emperor." "I'm not an emperor," Marcus protested. "I'm a janitor who found an abandoned baby in the trash." "You are what the Golden One has proclaimed you to be," said Varix firmly. "For countless generations, our scholars have maintained the prophecy. When the empire fractures and the royal lines grow corrupt, the Golden One will emerge and choose not from among the clutches, but from the stars. The outsider emperor will unite what has been broken through strength unknown to Draconian kind." The other Draconians knelt as well, bowing their heads in submission. Director Harrington watched with a mixture of awe and concern, clearly calculating the diplomatic implications. "General," she said carefully, "while this is all very profound, Mr. Dean is a Federation citizen and an employee of this station. He cannot simply be proclaimed emperor of another species." "With respect, Director," replied Varix without rising from his kneeling position, "the bond between a Nexus soul and its chosen guardian transcends all political boundaries. It is recognized by our oldest treaties with the Federation, treaties signed when your kind had barely achieved spaceflight." The hatchling chirped softly and climbed down Marcus's arm to the armrest of his chair. From there, it addressed the assembled Draconians. "Rise, General. Rise, all of you. The time for kneeling is past. Now is the time for action." Its tiny claws clicked against the polished surface of the armrest as it paced, looking remarkably regal despite its diminutive size. "Tell us who seeks to prevent my ascension." General Varix rose, his expression grim. "The royal clutch of Zornax has seized control of the Imperial Palace. They claim their bloodline is the only true successor to Emperor Craxus. When rumors emerged of a golden egg among the colonial clutches, they dispatched assassins to destroy it before it could hatch." "The failed specimen," Marcus said, remembering the words of the Draconians in the docking bay. "That's what they called you." The hatchling nodded. "They sought to dismiss me as a genetic aberration rather than what I truly am, a threat to their illegitimate claim to the throne." "But you survived," said Marcus, "because they got sloppy and threw you away instead of making sure you were gone." He couldn't bring himself to say dead, not when referring to the increasingly remarkable creature that had entered his life just hours ago. "Their arrogance will be their undoing," said the hatchling with surprising coldness for such a young being. It turned to General Varix. "How stands the Empire? Which clutches remain loyal to the old ways?" 3 of the 5 royal clutches oppose Zornax's claim. The colonial clutches are divided, but many would rally to a Nexus soul. Nearly half the fleet refuses to recognize Zornax's authority. "Then civil war is inevitable," said the hatchling sadly. "Not necessarily," Marcus found himself saying, surprising everyone, including himself. "Not if we can prove your legitimacy before the fighting starts." All eyes turned to him, human and draconian alike. "What do you propose, human?" asked one of the council members. Marcus thought quickly. 15 years of being invisible had taught him to observe, to understand the flows of power and politics that swirled through the station. Perhaps those lessons applied to interstellar politics as well. The Draconian people respect strength and tradition, right? So we need to demonstrate both. If there's a traditional way to confirm the hatchling's identity as this Nexus soul, we should do that publicly, where no one can dispute it. And we need allies, not just among your people, but others. The more species that recognize the hatchling's significance, the harder it will be for these Zornax people to dismiss it. The hatchling chirped approvingly. "This is why I chose you. You understand power differently than my kind does." It turned to Varix. "The Temple of Ancestors on Draconos Prime. The recognition ceremony must be performed there." "The temple is under Zornax control," said Varix grimly. "Then we take it back," said Marcus, surprising himself again with his boldness. "Not through war, but through diplomacy and, if necessary, stealth." Director Harrington, who had been silent during this exchange, stepped forward. "Mr. Dean, are you suggesting covert action against the ruling faction of a major galactic power?" "I'm suggesting," said Marcus carefully, "that we help this hatchling fulfill its destiny according to Draconian tradition. And if that means visiting a temple, then that's what we'll do." The hatchling climbed back to Marcus's shoulder and whispered in his ear, "You're learning quickly, Emperor." Marcus suppressed a smile. "So what's our next step, General?" "The warship Eternal Flame awaits your command. We can depart for Draconian space immediately." "Not without Federation clearance," interjected Director Harrington. "And not without a formal diplomatic status for Mr. Dean. If he's entering Draconian space, he needs protection under interstellar law." "Then make it happen, Director," said Marcus with an authority he didn't know he possessed. The fate of an empire depends on it. For a moment, Director Harrington looked like she might object to being ordered around by a station janitor. Then she saw the golden hatchling watching her, its ancient eyes evaluating, measuring. She nodded curtly. I'll contact Federation Diplomatic Corps immediately. You'll have ambassador status within the hour. As she left to make arrangements, Marcus felt the weight of what he'd just committed to. He was no diplomat or warrior, just a man who'd made one compassionate choice in a moment of crisis. Now he was bound for the heart of a fractured empire, with a baby dragon proclaiming him emperor. Are you afraid? Asked the hatchling quietly, sensing his thoughts. Terrified, admitted Marcus. Good, said the hatchling. Fear keeps one alert. But do not let it rule you. It nuzzled against his cheek. I have much growing to do before I reach my full power. Until then, I need your protection and guidance. I'm not sure I'm qualified to guide anyone, let alone a prophesied galactic uniters. The hatchling made its laughing sound again. You guided your daughter, did you not? From infancy to adulthood. Marcus started. How do you know about my daughter? I see her in your thoughts, in your worry, in the reason you work at this menial job, sending credits back to Earth for her education. That's a bit invasive. The bond works both ways, Marcus Dean. In time, you will see my thoughts as clearly as I see yours. The hatchling's tone softened. She would be proud of you, as I am. Before Marcus could respond, the suite doors opened again. Sarah Morgan entered, carrying a small case. I brought supplies, she said, setting the case down and opening it to reveal an assortment of nutritional supplements and what looked like specialized feeding equipment. Everything a growing dragon needs, according to the xenobiology database. She glanced at the assembled draconians. No offense intended, gentlemen. None taken, said General Varix with surprising graciousness. Your concern for the Golden One's welfare is commendable. Sarah approached Marcus and the hatchling, studying them both with scientific curiosity. How are you feeling? She asked Marcus. Like I've stepped into someone else's life, he admitted. The director says you're heading to draconian space. Apparently. Sarah nodded decisively. Then I'm coming too. Someone needs to make sure you both stay alive, and I'm the closest thing this station has to a draconian specialist. Engineer Morgan, began one of the council members. This is a matter of sacred importance, imperial succession, prophetic fulfillment. I get it, interrupted Sarah. It's also a matter of xenobiology and the care of an infant creature bonded to a human with no experience in interspecies parenting. Unless you have objections, General? To Marcus's surprise, General Varix inclined his head respectfully to Sarah. We welcome your expertise, Engineer Morgan. The Golden One's health is paramount. The hatchling chirped approvingly. I like her directness. She will come with us. Hours later, Marcus stood in Docking Bay 1. Staring up at the massive draconian warship that would be his home for the journey to Draconos Prime. The Eternal Flame lived up to its name. Its hull was decorated with intricate flame patterns that seemed to shift and move in the light, crafted from some material Marcus couldn't identify. Director Harrington handed him a data pad. Your diplomatic credentials, Ambassador Dean. They grant you full diplomatic immunity in draconian space and the authority to negotiate on behalf of the Federation in matters relating to the succession crisis. Thanks, said Marcus, still not quite believing the rapid change in his circumstances. Try not to start an interstellar war, added Harrington dryly. That's definitely on my to-do list. The hatchling, now fed and more energetic than ever, remained perched on his shoulder, observing everything with keen interest. Its growth was already noticeable. It had nearly doubled in size since Marcus had found it, and its wings were developing rapidly. Sarah joined them, carrying a duffel bag of personal items and scientific equipment. Ready for your first diplomatic mission, Mr. Ambassador? About as ready as I'll ever be. General Varix approached, accompanied by a draconian female whose scales shimmered with an iridescent quality Marcus hadn't seen before. Emperor Marcus, said Varix formally, may I present Priestess Thalira of the Ancestral Order. She will guide the Golden One in the awakening of its inherited memories. Priestess Thalira bowed deeply. It is an honor, Emperor. The emergence of a Nexus soul is a blessed event, one I never expected to witness in my lifetime. Please, just call me Marcus, he said, uncomfortable with the title. I'm still getting used to all this. As you wish, said the Lyra, though he could tell from her tone that she had no intention of addressing him so informally in public. She turned her attention to the hatchling. Young one, may I approach? The hatchling chirped an affirmative, and the Lyra reached out with a clawed hand, gently touching the top of the hatchling's head. Her eyes widened. The connections are forming already, she said with awe. Memories that should take months to surface are already accessible. Truly remarkable. What does that mean? Asked Sarah. It means, said the priestess, that the Golden One is developing faster than any Nexus soul in our recorded history. The journey to Draconos Prime will take approximately 2 of your Earth weeks. By the time we arrive, I suspect the Golden One will have accessed significant portions of its ancestral knowledge. Marcus looked at the tiny being on his shoulder with newfound wonder. You're going to grow up fast, aren't you? Necessity demands it, replied the hatchling simply. As they boarded the warship, Marcus caught Sarah studying the hatchling with a thoughtful expression. What is it? He asked. I'm wondering about its sex, she said. Draconian sexual dimorphism doesn't become apparent until adolescence. It could be male or female. Does it matter? In terms of succession politics? Possibly. Draconian society has traditional gender roles, though they're not as rigid as they once were. The hatchling, overhearing this, spoke up. I am neither and both. Nexus souls transcend such distinctions. Fascinating, murmured Sarah. Inside, the warship was a marvel of alien engineering. Corridors curved organically, lined with materials that seemed to pulse with inner light. Draconian crew members bowed deeply as Marcus passed, their scales shifting to respectful gold hues when they saw the hatchling. General Varix led them to what he called the Imperial Suite, a massive chamber near the ship's center, clearly designed for Draconian royalty. Everything was oversized for a human, but beautiful in an alien way, with sweeping architectural lines and materials that seemed alive. The eternal flame will depart within the hour, said Varix. Rest, Emperor Marcus. The journey ahead will test us all. After the general left, Marcus sank into a chair that could have comfortably seated 3 humans. This is surreal, he said to no one in particular. Sarah was already examining the room's various features, her engineer's curiosity overcoming any sense of protocol. The environmental controls are key to Draconian biology. Let me adjust them to something more comfortable for humans. The hatchling hopped down from Marcus's shoulder and began exploring the suite, its movements becoming more coordinated with each passing hour. It paused occasionally, head tilted as if listening to voices only it could hear. The memories, it explained when it caught Marcus watching. They come in flashes. Disjointed. I must learn to organize them. Is it painful? He asked, concerned. Not painful. Overwhelming. Imagine suddenly remembering lives you never lived, knowledge you never learned. The hatchling climbed onto a raised platform that appeared to be a draconian version of a desk. I will need to meditate soon, to process what comes. Priestess Thalira will guide me. Marcus nodded, then turned to Sarah, who had finished adjusting the room's temperature. What have I gotten myself into, Sarah? She sat beside him, patting his hand sympathetically. You did a good thing, Marcus. You saved a life. That the life happened to be a prophesied dragon messiah is just an unexpected complication. I've never been important before, he admitted. 15 years on that station, and most people didn't even know my name. Now I'm supposedly an emperor. For what it's worth, I always knew your name, said Sarah with a small smile. And I always thought you were better than that job. Before Marcus could respond, the ship's engines hummed to life, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through the deck plates. The journey to Draconos Prime had begun. The days that followed were a crash course in Draconian culture, politics, and biology. Priestess Thalira spent hours with the hatchling daily, guiding it through meditation exercises that helped it process the emerging ancestral memories. General Varix provided strategic briefings on the political situation awaiting them. and Sarah monitored the hatchling's remarkable growth, documenting changes that normally would have taken months occurring in days. By the end of the first week, the hatchling had tripled in size. Its vocabulary and cognitive abilities expanded exponentially, and it began to refer to itself by name. Oryx, a name it said had belonged to the first Nexus soul 10 millennia ago. The name was waiting in my memories, explained Oryx. It belongs to me now, as it belonged to the first. Marcus found himself growing into his unexpected role with surprising ease. The years of invisibility had made him an excellent observer, and now he applied those skills to diplomatic matters. He listened carefully during strategic sessions, asked thoughtful questions, and gradually gained the respect of the Draconian officers. Your Emperor demonstrates wisdom, he overheard one officer telling General Varix. The Golden One chose well. The bond between Marcus and Oryx strengthened daily. As the hatchling had predicted, Marcus began to sense its thoughts and emotions, flashes of insight and fragments of ancient memories that weren't his own. It was disconcerting at first, but gradually became comfortable, even reassuring. On the 10th day of their journey, as they approached the outer boundaries of Draconian space, the ship received a transmission that brought their mission into sharp focus. Emperor Zornax has declared all supporters of the false Golden One to be traitors to the Empire, reported General Varix grimly. The ancestral temple has been sealed, and the eternal flame has been designated a renegade vessel. We will face resistance when we enter the Draconos system. How much resistance? Asked Marcus. At minimum, a battle group of 6 warships. Possibly more. Sarah frowned. We can't fight our way through that many ships. We won't have to, said Oryx, who now stood nearly 3 feet tall, its wings partially developed and its voice deeper, though still recognizably young. There is another way to the temple, a way known only to Nexus souls and their guardians. All eyes turned to the rapidly maturing dragon. The ancestral temple was built over the ruins of the first nest, the place where Draconians evolved into sentience, explained Oryx. Beneath the temple lies a network of tunnels that connect to a secondary temple complex on Draconos' smaller moon, Lux. We can approach the moon under the guise of a commercial vessel, then use the ancient passage to reach the temple directly. How can you possibly know this? Asked Sarah. Those memories would be thousands of years old. 10,342 years, to be precise, said Oryx. From the time of the last Nexus soul. The knowledge was preserved specifically for this moment, when another of my kind would need to bypass forces controlling the temple. Marcus felt a chill at the implications. Your kind planned for this exact scenario? 10,000 years ago. Nexus souls see patterns across time, said Oryx simply. It is our gift and our burden. General Varix appeared troubled. The moon temple has been abandoned for millennia. We have no way of knowing if the passage still exists or is navigable. I know, said Oryx with quiet certainty. The way remains open, waiting for us. But we must hurry. Zornax's forces grow stronger each day, and the Empire fragments further. The plan took shape quickly. The eternal flame would continue toward Draconos Prime openly, drawing attention and possibly engaging Zornax's forces, while Marcus, Oryx, Sarah, Priestess Thalira, and a small squad of Draconian warriors would take a shuttle to Lux under a false transponder signal. It's risky, said Sarah as they prepared for departure. If we're caught. We won't be, said Marcus with more confidence than he felt. He looked at Oryx, now nearly 4 feet tall and increasingly regal in bearing. Our friend here has 10,000 years of planning on his side. The shuttle journey was tense but uneventful. Disguised as a mining survey vessel, they approached Lux, a barren, cratered moon that orbited close to Draconos Prime. From the shuttle viewport, they could see the massive gas giant that was the Draconian homeworld, its swirling atmosphere bands of red, gold, and purple, with orbital habitats visible as points of light against the planet's rings. Our ancestors evolved on a rocky world that orbited Draconos Prime, explained Oryx, gazing at the view with what seemed like nostalgia. When that world was destroyed in a cataclysm, they migrated to the habitats. Only the temples on Lux and the ancestral temple on Neros, the largest moon, remain as connections to our origins. The shuttle landed in an abandoned mining outpost, its existence apparently forgotten by all but those with access to the oldest records. Priestess Thalira led them to a structure half buried in the lunar dust, a temple entrance flanked by ancient, weathered statues of draconian figures. "The Temple of Origin," said Thalira reverently. "No draconian has set foot here in over 2,000 years. "That we know of," corrected Oryx. "The ancestral order maintained this place in secret, visiting once each century to ensure the passage remained viable." Inside, the temple was a marvel of ancient engineering. Despite millennia of abandonment, lights flickered to life as they entered, responding to some mechanism triggered by Oryx's presence. The walls were covered in intricate carvings depicting the evolution and early history of the draconian species, from primitive reptilian forms to the sophisticated beings they eventually became. "The passage is this way," said Oryx, leading them to a circular chamber at the temple's center. There, a platform of black stone waited, inscribed with symbols that glowed faintly blue at the dragon's approach. "A teleportation system?" asked Sarah, examining the platform with professional interest. "Of a sort," replied Oryx, "though your science would struggle to classify it accurately. It operates on principles your kind has yet to discover." The platform activated fully as Oryx stepped onto it, the symbols flaring bright blue. "Come," said the young dragon. "Stand with me. The passage recognizes me and will accept those I bring." Marcus joined Oryx on the platform, followed by Sarah, Thalira, and the draconian warriors. As the last of their party stepped onto the black stone, the blue light intensified, surrounding them in a field of energy that made Marcus's skin tingle. "Remember," said Oryx, "when we arrive at the ancestral temple, we must proceed directly to the Chamber of Acknowledgement. Only there can I be formally recognized as a true Nexus soul, in a way that even Zornax cannot dispute." Marcus nodded, though the tingling sensation was becoming almost uncomfortable. "And if Zornax has guards in the temple, they will not expect us to come from within," said one of the warriors confidently. "The advantage of surprise will be ours." The blue light flashed blindingly bright, and Marcus felt a moment of disorientation, as if his body were being pulled in multiple directions simultaneously. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the sensation ceased. The blue light faded, and they found themselves standing on an identical platform in a much larger chamber. "The ancestral temple," whispered Thalira. "We have arrived." The chamber they had materialized in appeared to be deep underground, with no visible exits. But Oryx approached one wall with confidence, pressing a clawed hand against a seemingly random point. The wall shimmered and became transparent, revealing a hidden passage. "The Way of Remembrance," said Oryx. "It will lead us to the main temple complex." They moved through the passage quickly and silently, the draconian warriors taking point and rearguard positions. Marcus stayed close to Oryx, feeling both protective of and protected by the rapidly maturing dragon. Sarah kept pace beside them, a small scanner in her hand monitoring for any signs of detection. "Energy signatures ahead," she whispered after several minutes of travel. "Multiple life forms." Oryx nodded. "We are nearing the public areas of the temple. Be ready." The passage ended at another concealed door, this one opening into what appeared to be a maintenance area of the main temple. They emerged cautiously, the warriors scanning for threats. "Clear," reported the lead warrior. "But I hear voices nearby. The temple is not empty." "It shouldn't be," said the Lyra. "Even under Zornax's control, the daily rituals must continue. The priests and acolytes would remain." "Can we trust them?" asked Marcus. "The ancestral order serves the empire, not any individual ruler," replied the Lyra. "If they see Oryx, truly see what he is, they will recognize the truth." Oryx, now standing as tall as Marcus's chest, stretched his wings, which had grown large enough for short flights, and nodded decisively. Then let them see me. It is time for the acknowledgement. They moved through the maintenance corridors until they reached a junction that opened onto a grand hall. There, they paused, observing. The hall was massive, its ceiling vaulting hundreds of feet above them, supported by columns carved to resemble ancient draconian warriors. The floor was inlaid with precious metals and patterns that seemed to tell a story, the history of the empire, perhaps. At the far end of the hall stood a raised dais, upon which sat an ornate throne. And upon that throne sat a draconian of impressive size, his scales a deep crimson, adorned with jewels and ceremonial armor. "Emperor Zornax," whispered the Lyra. "He has taken residence in the temple itself, a violation of our most sacred traditions." Around the throne stood guards and courtiers, while priests conducted some kind of ceremony on the steps leading to the dais. The hall contained perhaps 50 draconians in total, far too many to fight, even with surprise on their side. "What now?" asked Sarah softly. Oryx's eyes gleamed with determination. "Now we reveal the truth. Marcus, the bond between us has grown strong enough. Are you ready to channel what I will share with you?" Marcus didn't fully understand, but nodded anyway. "I'm ready." "Then step forward with me. Let them see the human emperor and the golden one together." Before anyone could object, Oryx strode into the open hall, Marcus instinctively following at his side. As they emerged from the shadows, conversation ceased, the ceremony halted, and all eyes turned to the unlikely pair. "Impossible!" roared Emperor Zornax, rising from his throne. "The hatchling was destroyed." "I was discarded," corrected Oryx, his voice carrying effortlessly across the vast space. "Frozen and thrown away like trash. But this human, this being you consider lesser, found me, saved me, gave me warmth and life when my own kind sought my destruction." Zornax's scales flushed a deeper red with rage. "Guards, seize them!" But the guards hesitated, their scales shifting uncertainly as they beheld Oryx, whose golden coloration was unmistakable even at a distance. "The Golden One," whispered one of the priests, dropping to his knees. Others followed suit, recognition and awe spreading through the assembled draconians. "Traitors!" bellowed Zornax. "It is a trick, a genetic aberration, nothing more." "Let the acknowledgement prove the truth," challenged Oryx. "If I am false, the chamber will reject me. If I am true, a genuine Nexus soul, then you, Zornax, are the pretender." A murmur ran through the hall. The acknowledgement was sacred, its results indisputable under draconian law. To refuse such a challenge would be to admit defeat. Zornax snarled, then made a show of composing himself. "Very well. Let the aberration face the chamber. When it fails, its human pet will die alongside it." The priests, seemingly relieved to have a traditional resolution to the confrontation, quickly formed a procession. Two approached Marcus and Oryx, bowing respectfully. "The chamber of acknowledgement awaits, Golden One," said the elder priest. "And your emperor as well." They were led through the hall, past staring draconians, to a circular doorway inscribed with ancient symbols. The doorway led to a descending spiral staircase, which in turn opened into a perfectly spherical chamber deep beneath the temple. The Chamber of Acknowledgement was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. Its walls appeared to be made of some crystalline substance that both reflected and absorbed light in impossible ways. The effect was disorienting. Depth and distance seemed meaningless here, as if the chamber existed partially outside normal space. Emperor Zornax and his entourage followed them into the chamber, keeping a careful distance. The priests formed a circle around the center of the room, where a raised platform similar to the teleportation device awaited. "The Golden One must stand upon the focus point," instructed the elder priest. "The Bonded One, the Emperor, must stand opposite." Oryx took position on the platform, while Marcus stood facing him from the chamber floor. The priests began a rhythmic chant in an ancient form of the Draconian language, one that even Oryx had not used in Marcus's presence. "What happens now?" Marcus whispered. "The chamber will search my being," replied Oryx quietly. It will find the ancestral memories, verify them against its own records, and if I am genuine, acknowledge me before all present. And if you're not genuine? Oryx's expression was solemn. Then my body will be reduced to its component elements, and your mind will be severed from the false bond. It would be unpleasant. You might have mentioned that earlier, muttered Marcus. It was unnecessary. I know what I am. The chanting grew louder, and the crystalline walls of the chamber began to glow with an inner light that pulsed in rhythm with the priest's voices. The platform beneath Oryx illuminated from within, bathing the young dragon in golden radiance. Then, to Marcus's shock, he felt himself being lifted from the floor, suspended in midair as if gravity had been selectively cancelled around his body. Across from him, Oryx was similarly levitated, their eyes level despite their difference in height. Do not resist, advised Oryx through their mental link. The chamber examines us both, the Nexus soul and its chosen emperor. Marcus tried to relax as he floated, though the sensation was profoundly unsettling. He could hear gasps and murmurs from the watching Draconians. Apparently, this levitation wasn't a standard part of the ceremony. The light intensified, becoming almost painful to look at. Marcus closed his eyes, but still saw the golden glow through his eyelids. And then came the pressure, a mental force pushing into his consciousness, examining the bond between him and Oryx. Images flashed through his mind, moments from his own life, but also scenes he'd never witnessed, ancient battles among the stars, the founding of the Draconian Empire, the emergence of the first Nexus soul. The pressure built until he thought his skull might crack from the strain. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the pressure ceased. The light dimmed, and Marcus felt himself being gently lowered back to the chamber floor. He opened his eyes to see Oryx similarly descending, the young dragon's scales glowing with an inner light that matched the chamber walls. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Then the elder priest fell prostrate on the floor. "The chamber has spoken," he declared, voice trembling with emotion. "This is indeed the Golden One, a true Nexus soul, and this human is its rightfully chosen emperor." A ripple of movement spread through the chamber as every Draconian, even those in Zornax's entourage, dropped to their knees or lowered their heads in submission. Every Draconian except Zornax himself, who stood rigid with fury. "Lies," he hissed. "Some trick of technology." "No technology can deceive the chamber," said the elder priest, rising to his feet with newfound courage. "The acknowledgement has occurred as it has for countless generations. The Golden One is verified. Its emperor is confirmed. You stand against the will of the ancestors, Zornax." The false emperor's scales flushed nearly black with rage. With a roar, he drew a ceremonial weapon from his belt, a curved blade that hummed with energy, and lunged toward Oryx. "I will not be replaced by an aberration," he screamed. Marcus moved without thinking, placing himself between the charging Zornax and Oryx. He had no weapon, no armor, nothing but the instinct to protect the being that had chosen him. He raised his hands in a futile defensive gesture as the blade descended. But the blow never landed. Instead, a brilliant flash of golden light erupted from Oryx, temporarily blinding everyone in the chamber. When vision returned, Zornax stood frozen in mid-lunge, his body encased in a golden field of energy. Oryx stepped forward, wings fully extended, eyes glowing with power. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of millennia. "You would strike down a verified Nexus soul in the sacred chamber? Such sacrilege has not been attempted in the entire history of our people." The young dragon, no longer seeming quite so young, circled the immobilized Zornax. "For this alone, your line would be erased from memory. But your crimes extend further. The attempted murder of a hatchling, the usurpation of power, the violation of the temple's neutrality." The golden field intensified, lifting Zornax from the floor. The false emperor struggled against the invisible bonds, his rage giving way to fear as he realized the extent of Oryx's power. "I claim the right of judgment," declared Oryx formally, "as is the privilege of a Nexus soul when directly threatened." The watching Draconians murmured their assent, even those who had moments before been loyal to Zornax. The chamber's verification had changed everything. No Draconian would stand against a confirmed Nexus soul. "Wait," said Marcus, stepping forward. All eyes turned to him. The human janitor who had somehow become central to this alien power struggle. "There's been enough violence already." Oryx regarded him with interest. "What do you propose, Emperor?" Marcus considered his words carefully, aware that he was establishing precedent for his role in this strange partnership. "Exile, not execution. Show that the new era begins with mercy, not blood." A murmur ran through the watching Draconians, some approving, others clearly disappointed. Mercy was not a particularly Draconian concept, especially for traitors. Oryx was silent for a long moment, considering. Then, to everyone's surprise, he nodded. "The human wisdom of my Emperor will guide us." "So be it. Zornax of the Crimson Clutch, you are stripped of all titles and claims. You and your direct line are exiled beyond the Outer Rim, never to return to Imperial space on pain of death." The golden field surrounding Zornax pulsed once, brightly, and the former Emperor collapsed to the floor, his ornate armor and jewels vanishing, somehow dissolved by Oryx's power. He looked smaller without them, less imposing, just another Draconian. "Take him away," ordered Oryx. "Prepare a ship for his journey into exile." As guards led the stunned Zornax from the chamber, the elder priest approached and bowed deeply before Marcus and Oryx. "The acknowledgement is complete, but tradition demands a formal coronation for both the Nexus soul and its chosen emperor. The Empire must witness the beginning of this new age." "Then let it be done," said Oryx. "Immediately. The Empire has been fragmented for too long." Word spread quickly through Draconian space. Within hours, ships began arriving in orbit around Draconos Prime. Vessels from the scattered fleet, representatives of the colonial clutches, even delegations from allied species eager to witness this historic moment. The coronation took place in the temple's grand amphitheater, a space large enough to accommodate thousands of Draconians. Marcus, dressed in specially created ceremonial attire that blended human and Draconian elements, stood beside Oryx, who had continued to grow at an accelerated rate and now stood nearly 7 feet tall, his golden scales gleaming in the light of the twin suns that streamed through the amphitheater's open roof. The ceremony was broadcast throughout Draconian space and to key Federation worlds. Marcus spotted Director Harrington among the diplomatic observers, her expression a mixture of awe and bureaucratic calculation as she witnessed her former janitor being crowned co-emperor of a major galactic power. Sarah stood nearby, proudly representing both the Federation and Marcus's personal connection to humanity. She'd help him negotiate the complex path ahead, balancing his unexpected role in Draconian politics with his continued citizenship in the Federation. As the ancient crowns were placed upon their heads, a massive, ornate construction for Oryx, and a smaller, but no less impressive version for Marcus, the newly acknowledged emperor reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. From invisible station janitor to imperial co-ruler, all because he'd made one simple, compassionate choice, to save a life that others had discarded. The elder priest raised his hands, addressing the assembled multitude. "Behold Oryx, the Golden One, Nexus soul of the Draconian people. And behold Marcus Dean, the human emperor, chosen by the Golden One to lead our empire into a new age of unity." The amphitheater erupted in a deafening roar of approval. Thousands of Draconian voices raised in acceptance and celebration. As the sound washed over him, Marcus felt Oryx's mind touch his through their bond. "You are thinking of your daughter," observed the dragon. "Yes," admitted Marcus, wondering what she'll think when she discovers her father is now co-emperor of the Draconians. "She will be proud," assured Oryx, "and she will have a place of honor here, if she wishes it. The bond between us extends to those you love." "Thank you," said Marcus, genuinely moved, though I'm still not entirely sure what an emperor is supposed to do. Oryx's mental touch carried amusement. "You will continue doing what you have always done, Marcus Dean, seeing value in what others discard, showing compassion where others show indifference." That is why you were chosen. That is what will heal the empire and forge new bonds between our peoples. As the ceremony concluded and they moved toward the reception that would follow, Marcus found himself approached by draconians from all factions, military commanders, colonial governors, clutch leaders, all eager to pledge loyalty to the unusual new leadership of their empire. Each draconian bowed first to Oryx, as tradition demanded, but then, to Marcus's continued amazement, they bowed equally deeply to him, addressing him as Emperor with genuine respect, not because of his species or his background, but because of the choice he had made, the simple act of kindness that had changed the course of an empire. Sarah joined him during a momentary break in the procession of well-wishers. "So, Emperor Marcus," she said with a teasing smile, "was this a step up from maintenance duty, or just a lateral move?" Marcus laughed, perhaps his first genuine laugh since this strange journey began. "The hours are worse, but the benefits package is considerably better. And the company?" She nodded toward Oryx, who was deep in conversation with a delegation from one of the colonial clutches. "The best," said Marcus sincerely, "though I'm going to need help navigating all this. I hope you're planning to stick around." "Try and stop me," she replied. "Someone has to keep the human emperor from making interstellar diplomatic blunders. Might as well be me." In the days and weeks that followed, the Draconian Empire began to heal its divisions. Under the joint leadership of the Nexus Soul and the human who had saved it, old rivalries gave way to new alliances. The colonial clutches received greater representation in imperial governance, and diplomatic initiatives with the Federation flourished as never before. And when the first diplomatic pouch from Earth arrived for Emperor Marcus, he opened it with trembling hands to find a message from his daughter. She'd seen the broadcasts, read the news reports, and had a single question for her father. "Dad, did you seriously become Emperor of the Space Dragons?" Marcus dictated his reply with a smile. "It's a long story, sweetheart. But it started, as the best stories often do, with taking out the trash." And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.